Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Anyhow Anyway by Summer England, a cozy literary chaos podcast where we're talking about all things bookish and writing routines, but also the chaos in between as we instill whimsy into our lives, okay? Because the goddesses know that we need it, all right? We are back with a new episode, and as you may have noticed, we have a new release day. That's right. I'm shifting from Thursdays to Tuesdays because one of the reasons is that once we get into Thursday, I have already forgotten that I need to do this podcast. And so I'm shifting it to Tuesday because that allows me to batch my content over the weekend. You don't need to know this within the first 40 seconds of learning about this podcast. If you're a new listener, I'm sorry for this absolute, I'm being an accountant right now. That's what I feel like. Anyhow, we have a new release day, which is Tuesdays. Tuesdays just feel flirty. I don't know what else to tell you, okay? This year I'm turning 30, and I really am trying to hit the 30 flirty and thriving situation. And one of the reasons I'm doing that one of the ways I'm doing that is to do these podcast releases on Tuesdays. There's just something about it that I feel is going to be more special. I don't know. And if anything I have learned in my life is that if I just take the next step, and the next step, all that I see and that I feel is this feels right now and it's going to make me happy, I just take it. And it's usually ended up pretty okay for the most part. Not always, but I'm always going to do what makes me happy. And then once it's not making me happy anymore, bye. And today's episode is all about curating whimsy, not happiness. Happiness is a feeling, but whimsy's a thing. Whimsy can be created, and sometimes it takes making my external circumstances more whimsical in order to help my internal settings to restabilize, to reach homeostasis, or to just have a bit of joy within a hard day. And so that's what today is all about, okay? And just a few housekeeping things is that my book is out. You should order it. I'm very pro indie bookstore. A lot of you have been asking very kindly, where can I order from that gets me the most money? It doesn't really matter. I also don't know. I have a big publisher, so ordering from anywhere is going to be helpful. But for my soul, do it from an indie bookshop, okay? That's just going to be the best, I think. If not, reserve it from your local library. Also, it's on sale on Amazon right now, and I don't know how the sales work. I don't know how Kindle Unlimited works, etc., but you can go onto Amazon and also snag a copy, which I think today it's like 17% off. I don't understand the ins and outs of that, but The Impossible Garden of Clarithorn is out and ready for you. And I have been loving all of the stories that you've been sending me. And everyone is really so particularly precious because they've been very intentional of, hey, I know that you're probably getting a lot of direct messages about your book right now, but I just want to tell you XYZ. And they proceed to tell me like the sweetest possible case scenario about how the book helped them or the book was a bit of joy, all of this stuff. And I cannot tell you how much every single one of those mean to me. I've tried to be as responsive as possible to those because I know at some point that the DMs are going to get lost, and I also, just for my own mental health, don't like looking at DMs all the time, and it's just not something that I engage with because there's so many of them, and once I start, I feel responsible to answer all of them, and I don't have the bandwidth to do that. But this launch week, it's been really important for me for whatever reason. Nobody told me I had to do this, but I wanted to be as present as possible for the people who have been taking time, have put in years of support already, a lot of these people, and then new readers who are new to me and new to content. And I know that they are taking their time and you are taking your time to listen, to engage, to support. And I want to do that as much as I can for this week because I know that I can't be all things for everyone all the time, and to be that like digitally present isn't something I usually do, but I definitely wanted to do that this week, and it has meant so much. And so if you were one of those people who reached out or have felt that, thank you so much. It means the world. Now, on to whimsical things. So, one thing that I think is ultra important and something I take so seriously in my life is ensuring that I have maximum amount of whimsy. And whimsy is, I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I feel whimsy is more about a state of mind that anything is possible, even mundane. And oftentimes that whimsy can be free. And so the things that I'm talking about today either cost nothing or they are low cost, because one thing, especially in this economy, I want to be cognizant of when I am making suggestions is that whimsy shouldn't be behind a paywall. And so the barrier of entry, I want to be more like time and or interest rather than, and for a low price of $129.99 for 3 months, you can get this app or whatever. Anyways, so first and foremost, this I would believe has the most amount of whimsy in my life. It can be the most expensive endeavor of all time, or it can be a little bit free. And that is gardening, not of the recreational variety, but the real variety. Now, gardening is a spectrum in that you have your master gardeners, you have people who have the seasons memorized, they have their plots of land, they understand soil. Gardening can be a science, it can also be a hobby, it can also just be a tiny little thing that brings joy. And so we're going to be in the hobby tiny little thing that brings joy, okay? Because you don't have to go to a plant center and spend $100, I think, to do a spot of gardening, right? You can pretty easily go to a big box store and get a plug tray or flats and start your own seedlings. And I think nothing brings me more joy than planting my little seeds, watering them, putting them in a windowsill, and then watching them sprout. And why I think it's better, not always, but I think it's a little bit more whimsical, is that you have gotten to be there from the beginning of this little plant's life, which is so special, I think. And you can talk to them and blah, blah, blah. But it also doesn't necessitate you to like build a huge garden bed. You could have a very tiny container garden in a windowsill. Maybe you only have an herb garden. Maybe your windowsill isn't big enough, so you prop them up on some bookshelves. You don't need a grow light. You just need some type of sunlight. And also seeds are very cheap. And there are some seeds I would suggest for all of you people who are like, I would like to get into gardening, but I don't know the first thing about it. I would look up seeds with the highest germination rate. So that's going to be, there are some seeds that are more fiddly than others. So setting yourself up for success is, I think, the biggest aspect of whimsical gardening, because there is a big curve, a learning curve to gardening and failure. And sometimes if you're new to it, there's just a lot of bits and bobs that can be a barrier to entry. For example, maybe you don't even know that you need to research what zone you're in, meaning where are you at in the world and what seasons are going to be the most suitable for what plants are going to thrive. What plants need. Are they a shade perennial plant? Are they a wet shade perennial plant? Are they the type of plant that you can they sort of thrive on neglect, like yarrow and some versions of lavender? And it can feel very overwhelming to remember all of that. And if you're anything like me, whenever I start out on a new hobby, I am sort of doing it on hard mode. But gardening has been something I've been doing since I was a little baby one. I grew up farming on a big patch of land and doing our food and everything since I was 3 in eastern Kentucky. And I did that my whole life. And then I worked at a garden. So I get that there's a big learning curve. Like squash needs to be planted sort of like in a hill. And then some root vegetables like carrots, you can't really start in seed trays because root vegetables don't appreciate being transplanted, and you kind of need to direct sow those. But depending on what zone you're in, you might direct sow them at a time where they actually shouldn't have been direct sown yet, but you got tricked by the weather, etc., etc. So my point is, sometimes whimsy, I think, is best succeeded with at first when you set yourself up for success and you kind of start it on easy mode. And so I would suggest if you wanted to start gardening, and I'm kind of assuming that you don't have land because the demographic of people that listen to this podcast, if I put this into like a Google search engine on whether or not they are homeowners, like 78% are not and live in an apartment complex. And that's, I mean, you may have a balcony, but outside space is limited. We don't have the UK benefit of being provided like plots of earth. It's just not as like common practice in America. They are available in some areas, but also not all, other than like community gardens, which is another fun, whimsical thing to do, is look up your community garden, because you can volunteer there. And more often than not only are you going to learn about how to garden, how to maintain your own vegetable patch, how to maintain your own sort of ecosystem of agriculture, you're going to be getting firsthand experience with your community. And oftentimes you're getting free vegetables is kind of the pay that they will give you. Sometimes, not all, but that's how it works at our local community garden. Anyhow, so say you're an apartment dweller, you want to add some whimsy into your life. You have one south-facing window, which means that's the window that's going to get the most amount of sunlight. If you're asking, Summer, how do I find which one is my south-facing window? Get your compass out of your phone. And if you are a person who has a flip phone that doesn't have a compass, one, you're cool. I think that that's awesome. Two, just get a real one. And that's even more cool, and I would argue extremely whimsical, to have a real compass. Anyhow, get that out, find the most south-facing window that gets sunlight. You get your little seed trays, which you can also just use an egg carton. You can use so many different household trash items as seed trays, which is also going to offset the cost and offset carbon footprints. And you can use that. And just start small. You don't need a huge thing. You don't need to grow, 17 seedlings at all. You can do maybe like, I would say maybe 12 to 15, especially if it's a high germination rate. You might end up with a lot of plants that you don't need. But if that happens, then you can give them to friends, which is a very sweet gift to give, I think. It's like, hey, I grew this plant myself. Oh my gosh, what could be better than that? And from there, you get to water them, then you get to transplant them, and then you can paint the pot, and then all of a sudden you have a marigold on your windowsill that you have tended since it was a little seedling. And it might never go outside, and maybe you're just going to do an herb garden. But if you're wanting to start to get into the earth, into gardening, I would really encourage you to start small. I think that there's a pressure, and maybe I'm the one who feels this, but I think that there's a pressure sometimes in starting anything outside that you need to be like, you can just plant seeds and just do it. And it's easy to forget that there's like an art and a science, and it can be really difficult. And sometimes doing that can be more discouraging, because you will suddenly feel like you actually can't grow anything and you're never going to do it again, when really it's just you have to give yourself a toolkit. And starting with something simple like a marigold, or there are so many flowers that have high germination rates. There are definitely a lot of herbs that have high germination rates. In fact, if you sort of want to make perpetuating basil, you can go to your local grocery store where they have like basil pots already there, and you can snip off some of the stems. I would encourage you to watch videos about this if you're interested in it, and you can propagate those. And once those stems do roots, then you can plant them, and then you can have 15 basil bushes out of that one basil plant that you got at the store. Now, is that basil plant going to survive if you just planted it outside? Almost across the board, no, because they're all like fertilizer shocked. They're like drug addicts for fertilizer, these plants are, because their growing environment has been, for a grocery store. So it's shocked out of its own climate. And more often than not, if they get into the ground, there's just not enough fertilizer. It's just not going to do that. But you can propagate them, and you can have an herb garden. You can have a tiny little container garden inside of your house. And then from there, once you get stuff underneath you, have your sea legs, your garden legs, so to speak, then you can graduate to more advanced situations, okay? You can start going to your community garden. But I think something that is really special and really whimsical in life is the ability to grow something and to tend it. And there's no fast track to it. There's no necessarily content you can digest in order to be better or worse at it. There's information, but you kind of just have to do it yourself. And I think it's so special, and it opens up such a fun world, which again, whimsy's a state of mind of like, anything is possible. Now that anything might not be, is not grand, right? I think whimsical stuff is so much about the mundane, about, tiny little mushroom lamps, and it's about what makes daily life magical rather than these giant dreams that will at some point make life worth it to some self-perceived notion inside of success or failure. So, whimsy mundane. Gardening, number 1. Number 2, a free thing. Libby. Not enough people know about Libby. If you listen to this podcast, you probably know about Libby, but in case you don't, Libby is an audiobook app on your phone that connects to your local library, and you are able to get audiobooks from there for free. Libraries and Libby, please go inside of there. The resources at libraries, I don't think we as a society talk about it enough. There is a library not that far away from me who was voted like the number 1 library in Virginia. And you can rent camping gear from there because one of their missions is to get people outside and get people engaging with nature. And so they provide you camping gear for free. The barrier of entry to camping is huge, mostly because equipment costs money. Like the initial startup, I'm sure it's cheaper after that. I don't know. I'm not a camp. You cannot get me in a tent. I will spend 23.5 hours outside in the dirt. I don't care how dirty I get. If I am not guaranteed a clean shower and a clean pair of sheets at the end of the night and the ability to wash the smell of bonfire off my body, get me out of there. Get me out of there. I love nature. I will spend all day in it. You can't put me in a tent, but I understand that people like it. So anyhow, local libraries are the most magical place in the world, and I think that they should be packed more than they are. Every time I go into a library, I'm like, why are 1,000 people not in here? The books are free. The books are free. A lot of libraries don't even have a limit on how many you can check out. You can just read them for free. You can read them there. I often go to the library to write because it breaks up the monotony of my day. And it's also, I don't have to purchase an item in order to stay in there. So instead of writing at coffee shops where I might have to spend, $5 to $7 on a cup of coffee because I'm getting a little fancy little drink because I'm a hummingbird in human form, I can go to the library and I can sort of engage with the community and also be in a different space that I find inspiring. And there's stuff there for everybody. And read more children's books at the library. Just go through and just look at the pictures, look at the storytelling. It's so whimsical, it's so magical, it's so fantastical that it even exists. It gives me hope that that is still something that is funded by the government, is that there are libraries in the world. There are librarians, and they are the lifeblood. Librarians and booksellers are the lifeblood that keeps this reading world going around. And if you're an audiobook person and you happen to not have known about Libby, and full disclosure, I didn't know about Libby because I'm not an apps person. I really don't like having an app for everything. I don't even like having a single-use kitchen appliance. I need my appliances to sort of be for multiple things other than my coffee maker and my toaster, which I believe they are for multiple things because without my coffee, I can't do anything. My coffee and my career are synonymous, and my toast and my ability to live are synonymous. So, I didn't know about Libby until 3 years ago, maybe less than that. And I was so blown away. And there's also, Libby is nice because you don't have limitless options. And so I have ended up listening and engaging with books I wouldn't have before simply because they were the ones available at the time and I just wanted to listen to a book. And I have listened and read so many books that way that I would have not otherwise. And it's just because life had already made the decision for me. And that's really nice because I like reading in multiple genres, and sometimes I think it's pretty whimsical to not have to make a decision. I don't know about you, but I get decision fatigue, and it is pretty hard for me to get decision fatigued simply because I am making decisions all the time. I love to have a decision. I love to have an opinion. You ask me something, I more than likely have an opinion about it, unless it's about pop culture in any capacity, at which point I've not engaged with it enough to care to have an opinion. Other stuff, yeah, I'm gonna have an opinion. And so for life to offer that to me, and it's the decisions already made of, here are 3 books that are available right now at your public library that you would even want to listen to. Do you want to? Yeah, actually. Yeah, I would. That's how I read Tress of the Emerald Sea for the first time. And before I know my listeners of the podcast are not, because you all are kind, whimsical humans. But if in the off chance you think that audiobook listening is not reading, I would just don't say it out loud. Let's just not say that out loud, because what do you gain from it? It is no great feat to count oneself morally higher than somebody else on something that doesn't matter at the end of the day. It really doesn't. Listening to audiobooks doesn't hurt anyone. You know what I mean? So, anyhow, Libby Libraries is whimsy. The third thing, which could be very silly, rearranging your room is kind of heat. Nothing gives me more random serotonin than moving some stuff around randomly on a Monday. All of a sudden, I'm like, and that bookshelf's suddenly going to go downstairs. And all of a sudden, I've shifted the energy around. I've shifted the vibes. I've changed something fundamental. I have the power to, again, anything's possible. I can just walk into my house and be like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I did that not that long ago with the Whimsy House. I walked into my house and I thought, and now is the time that the gray LVP in here has to leave. Why is it still here? I called a contractor that day. He came over. We're working together now, okay? I pulled all the LVP up in my kitchen randomly, and then I rearranged the kitchen. I did a bunch of new things just randomly before work. And now every time I walk into my kitchen, I get just such a shot into my veins. I get a liquid IV of happiness. Partly because I think it looks better, partly because there is something, and maybe this is the control freak in me, maybe this is my type A Virgo eldest daughter autism, is that I just made a little slight positive change in my own life by something like that. And it wasn't anything momentous, which I think is something that is really important for me to always remember, is that sometimes the biggest improvement that I am able to make in my own life is actually pretty small. It's changing the sheets. It's thrifting a new shower curtain. It is making my own stamp to stamp along my bathroom walls, because while the world outside is always what the world outside is going to be, which is an up and down of people in power doing literally wild things to innocents. Sometimes to give myself strength to keep on going on and to deal with also just the other things that life throws at you of interpersonal weirdness or, mental health stuff, or maybe you're like me and you have a child and that's demanding in its own right. Sometimes the biggest impact is not upheaval of a bunch of relationships or needing to make this huge change. It is, I just need to stamp my walls in my laundry room. And actually that's going to teach me more about what I need right now in this era of my life than making this big change. And so honestly, those are my top 3 whimsy tips for this week. I don't know. If you do any of them, let me know. But again, whimsy is just making mundane magic happen every single day. And we humans are capable of so much little sprouts of joy that we don't even know that we're doing, because I think humans inherently are magical. I think that. Maybe that's a hot take. But for the most part, I think society knows how to fall, but humanity knows how to rise. And we see that every day in different ways with each other. We need only look. We need only look. Anyhow, on to news that doesn't matter. What am I reading, writing, listening to? I am reading right now The Enchanted Greenhouse, which I'm listening to on audio, and it is lovely. What I'm physically reading right now is a poetry handbook by Mary Oliver and Period Power by Maisie Hill, because I love a nonfiction. I'm such a Mary Oliver head. I know that's very whatever typical of me or something. I am a huge fan of Mary Oliver. You can't take her away from me. I just am. There's something about it. And Period Power because some things that aren't whimsical is irregular cycles and elongated luteal phases and all of that happens with PMDD, comorbid with ADHD and autism, which is something I'll talk about at a different time because we should have conversations about it and the chaos it rains down in our lives. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that's what I'm reading. What I'm writing right now, I am back, not necessarily to the drawing board, but I'm rewriting my Shakespearean academic romance, and I am doing something I never do, and I'm outlining bits and pieces because if you know me, I've said before, I don't have a problem with word count. I can get those numbers up, okay? But I don't want to linger. I want things to plot ahead, especially in a romance novel. And so I'm making myself an outline so I have really specifics to write to remind myself, like, yes, have your fun and still give yourself room for discovery in the scene, but make sure you're getting to the next point. And also because the structure of the novel, there's like the external world that's going on, and then their internal world, and then this really sort of competition-esque thing. There's lots of organizing principles in this world that I need to make sure are crystal clear and happening at the precise time so that the chaos of falling in love and that can be frenzied and fun and unexpected while the outside world stays, routine and structured. And part of that is I'm going to outline myself, which is I've already written the book. And so doing that it's more just reminding myself of the beats that I still want to maintain from the first book and keep in the second book. And I'm doing the same thing with my Wild West meets the Mummy Sapphic Romantasy. And then I'm working on a third right now, and I'm in the middle of outlining that. And it is about an inn for witches out of chances. And the inn is in need of repair. The inn is sort of sentient, and she is very prideful. And she needs people to fix her up before she's able to house any more witches. The witches that end up there, they are ex-lovers, and they are also cursed to never be able to be around each other because that's how it is. It's sapphic. It is inspired by what if the aunts in Practical Magic weren't really sisters, but they were lovers. Do you know what I mean? So I'm working on those 3 projects right now. So a romance, a Wild West romantasy, and then back to a cozy fantasy. Those are my 3 organizing principles right now. What am I listening to? I am listening to a podcast of Smut and Dragons, obviously, the All Things Cozy podcast, obviously, the Shit No One Tells You About Writings podcast, and then I'm also listening to Dolly Parton and the Chicks, because you can take me out of Eastern Kentucky. You cannot take the country music out of me. And I mean, Appalachia, I'm still in Appalachia, so the music is still rife here. And there's something about this time of year when I'm in the garden. Ooh. Also an exciting tidbit of news. I am building my own garden fence and garden trellises out of sticks and twine. It's not proper warble fencing. It's not that. It's an ode to that. It's more just like slight structures for vining plants to do a natural gate or a natural sort of hedge of protection around the veggie patch. But I am so excited to engage in that chaos whimsy. Oh, also, I have an idea, which is a scary thing. In my hallway, there is plywood underneath the LVP. There's hardwood in other places, but that was just plywood. And my contractor, who enables kind of my chaos, which is why we work well together, I think, said I should have fun with it. And so I am going to be painting the plywood yellow and white tiles sort of situation because whimsy, and because I can, and because I want to know what it looks like, and because my contractor said I could. And he said that that was a good idea. And I want to know if I like tiling, because this house is from 1940 and eclectic tile was popular in that time. And as I restore the spirit of this home, I want to make sure that I am considering what the eras of stuff, because I lean even older. I'm more like 1870, 1880s girl. But this is a house from 1940s, and I want to bring that vibe as much as I can into the house and into the spirit and into its bones, because she deserves it. The Whimsy House does, okay? Anyhow, anyway, that's going to be all from me this week. I hope you all have a lovely whimsical week, and let me know in the comments what your whimsy things that you're engaging with. Make sure to order The Impossible Garden for yourself if you want a little bit of reading whimsy. Also, I am going on two cozy trips. Both are in Ireland. One is in August and one is in October, and I'm applying a huge discount. You get $250 off plus an extra $50. I believe the week of April 21st. I'll have more information for that to come. But if you're somebody who has been on the fence of like, I would like to take a trip abroad, but I need it to be guided, and I would like to know some of the people and or know that the people I'm going with are like-minded in some capacity, I would recommend coming with me. The first one is we're going to do a book lovers crawl through Dublin. And then the next one, we're going to do a fiber lovers crawl. So we're going to go to different knitting stores, but both we're going to be talking about writing. I'll be talking about cozy fantasy. There's going to be writing routines. There's going to be publishing, because people I know always like having that to be discussed. Also, if it's of interest, doing ADHD and autism plus writing, and how I think that can be a superpower. You just have to be aware of your writing partner. So those trips I will leave in the comments and all of that jazz. So anyhow, have a whimsical week. Thank you for your support, rate and review, etc., etc. All right, bye.